This is Kane, the Big Red Machine. In this edition of Where Are They Now?, we look back at some of the most dominant and destructive forces in WWE history. Kane made his way to the ring, accompanied by eerie chimes and smoke that poured from the floor. The turnbuckle pads were removed from the ring. Then came the horrifying visage of the demonic Kane. His mask was frightening. His presence was imposing. His pyro was spectacular. Some superstars use their power to entertain, but others use it just to destroy everything in their path. In the case of the Big Red Monster, it's been both, along with a lot of fire. Kane's alter ego emerged after he suffered severe burns in a fire that engulfed his family home when he was just 9 years old. But that was only the beginning of their epic rivalry. He steamrolled through his opponents, leaving a trail of broken bodies and shattered dreams in his wake. He also had an arsenal of finishing moves that would make even the toughest superstars tap out in defeat. No matter how badly he was beaten or how many times he was counted out, he always seemed to find a way to come back and haunt his opponents. Sure, he had his moments of humanity, but they were like glimmers of light in a dark tunnel. For the most part, Kane was a force of pure evil, a manifestation of all the darkness that lurked in the human psyche. After hanging up his wrestling boots, Kane decided to pursue a career in politics. And who could have predicted that Kane, the wrestling legend, would go on to become the mayor of a major city? Nobody, that's who. But hey, stranger things have happened. Kane won the election and became the 26th mayor of Knoxville. And to all those naysayers who thought that Kane was just another celebrity politician looking to cash in on his fame, I say this: Kane is more than just a celebrity. It shows that with hard work, dedication, and a whole lot of charisma, anyone can achieve their dreams, no matter how unconventional they may seem. And while you're at it, subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay safe, stay awesome, and above all, stay subscribed. And who knows, maybe one day we'll see Kane, the presidential candidate, on the campaign trail. Imagine that. It's a big red machine running for the highest office in the land. Now that's a story I would definitely tune in for. He is a dedicated public servant who is committed to making a difference in the lives of the people he represents. Yes, you heard that right. The Big Red Monster went from professional wrestling superstar to politician. Talk about a career change. 8. But perhaps it wasn't as surprising as it seemed. Both jobs require you to be able to handle pressure, make quick decisions, and connect with people from all walks of life. And let us not forget that being a pro wrestler is just as much a performance art as politics. It takes charisma, showmanship, and an ability to connect with the audience. Skills that are just as valuable in the political arena as they are in the wrestling ring. After all, Kane was known for his larger-than-life personality and his ability to connect with people on a personal level. Plus, he had a lot of experience in public speaking thanks to his years of hyping up the crowd before his matches. But maybe that's why we were so fascinated by him. He represented the part of us that we try to keep hidden, the raw, unfiltered ID that lies just beneath the surface. It takes a special kind of person to balance the demands of public office with the pressures of performing in front of millions of people around the world. But Kane is up for the challenge. He's a natural leader with a passion for public service and a heart of gold. Sure, he might not have the typical background of most politicians, but that just makes him all the more unique and qualified for the job. It was like trying to kill a ghost, except the ghost was covered in soot and had a sick fascination with setting things on fire. And speaking of fire, you can't talk about Kane without mentioning his love affair with all things pyrotechnic. This guy had a fetish for setting things on fire, whether it was the ring itself or his opponents. Kane brought the heat and he wasn't afraid to use it. The sight of him emerging from a fiery inferno, his mask glowing an eerie red in the flames, was both terrifying and mesmerizing. It was like watching the devil himself rise from the pits of hell. No wonder people were scared of this guy. The chokeslam was one of his signature moves, a devastating slam that would leave his opponents gasping for air. It was like being crushed under the weight of a mountain. As the years went on, Kane continued to wreak havoc in WWE, tormenting his opponents and leaving a legacy of pain and destruction in his wake. But eventually, as all things must, his time in the spotlight faded. The once sold-out arenas became smaller and smaller. The roar of the crowd turned to a dull roar, and the fires that once burned so brightly flickered and died down to a small flame. Still, Kane's presence was felt long after he left the ring. He became a sort of urban legend in the world of professional wrestling, a cautionary tale of what happens when darkness consumes the human soul. Then there was the Tombstone Piledriver, a move that looked like it belonged in a horror movie, not a wrestling ring. Kane would lift his opponent onto his shoulders and bring them down with a sickening thud that shook the very foundations of the ring. It was as if he was trying to put their souls into the mat, but somehow his opponents never stayed down for long. One of the most terrifying things about Kane was his sheer strength and power. He was literally a force of nature, a human battering ram that would crash through anything that stood in his way. It was like watching a freight train derail, except instead of metal and glass, it was flesh and bone. The sound of his heavy boots stomping on the mat still echoes in my ears, a haunting reminder of the terror he unleashed. Kane was unstoppable. Their feud would play out over the next 2 decades, keeping fans on the edge of their seats. The intensity of their battles was palpable. It was clear that these two were going at each other's throats, not just for the sake of the storyline, but because of the genuine animosity they had for one another. It was as if the entire WWE universe was holding its breath during every encounter, unsure of what kind of destruction would unfold. His mother and 2 siblings perished in the blaze, but he and his father survived. As a result, Kane grew up resenting his brother, the Undertaker, believing that he had caused the fire. Of course, this was not the case. But Kane's rage toward his sibling knew no bounds, leading him to target Taker in matches, sometimes even turning on him when he was at his most vulnerable. From his horrifyingly awesome entrance to his relentless pursuit of his brother, Kane has left a lasting impact on the hearts, minds, and souls of fans around the world. His presence alone was enough to strike fear into the hearts of his opponents. The two would go on to win the GWF Tag Team Championship together. At this point, Jacobs weighed in at a trim 230 pounds. So how did he transform himself into the nearly 400-pound behemoth known as Kane? Well, in an interview with WWE.com, he revealed that he simply stopped dieting. "I pretty much just decided to stop cutting, and that was about the end of it," said Jacobs. "It wasn't so much a decision as much as I just stopped caring." With his new bulkier physique, Jacobs would take on the persona of the demonic Kane, a character that would go on to terrorize WWE for years. He may not have had the longevity of The Rock or the charisma of Stone Cold Steve Austin, but what he lacked in those areas, he certainly made up for in destructive capabilities. If you're like me and can't get enough of the legendary superstars of the Attitude Era, then make sure to follow to catch all of our latest content. Before we get started, let me know your favorite Kane memory down in the comments below. And while you're at it, subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes. Now let's get to it. Who is Kane? Glenn Thomas Jacobs was born on April 26, 1967 in West Point, Iowa. He always wanted to be a wrestler. Growing up, he was inspired by the likes of superstar Billy Graham, Bruno Sammartino, and the original WWF champion Gorilla Monsoon. After graduating from high school in 1985, Jacobs enrolled at the University of Iowa, where he earned a degree in political science. But his real education began after college, when he trained under the legendary Dory Funk Jr. at the Funk's Wrestling School. After honing his craft in the squared circle, Jacobs got his start in the business as a masked enforcer named Diesel. Teaming up with fellow future WWE Hall of Famer Shawn Michaels at the Global Wrestling Federation. Why does Kane hate his brother? The first time the brothers faced off in a match at King of the Ring 1997, Kane picked up a victory after hitting The Undertaker with a steel chair. And speaking of destruction, Kane was one of the most destructive forces in WWE history. It seemed like nothing could stand in his way. But his reign of terror didn't stop there. No, sir. Another thing that set Kane apart was his uncanny ability to rise from the dead. Seriously, this guy was like the Lazarus of wrestling. But beneath the mask, there was more to Kane than met the eye. And let's face it, who doesn't love a good monster story? What is Kane doing now? Though Kane's in-ring career may have come to an end, his story is far from over. So in 2017, Kane decided to run for mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. Of course, being mayor isn't exactly the same as being a professional wrestler. Besides, being mayor of a big city isn't all that different from being a professional wrestler. Overall, Kane's transition from professional wrestler to politician is nothing short of inspiring. What do you think of Kane's career after WWE? Let me know in the comments below.